have only two speakers, and I am very excited to invite to the stage a superwoman that I had an opportunity to meet yesterday. She was a radio host, and she actually left radio to do something better, I think. I'm not sure. She will tell us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure that we will have an opportunity to listen to award-winning AI content and prompt engineering strategists that has worked with Microsoft and also with Google. Presenter for Apple Music, Channel 4, BBC, etc. Her career spans the industry's biggest names, from crafting Cortana's British personality at Microsoft to launching Google's Assistant in the UK. She has even her own podcast on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's meet her with warm welcome, Georgia Louise Anderson. We are excited for you, Georgia.
Hi. How do I say hello in Kosovo? Pushtin Dacha. I've been practicing, but I still forgot. Hello, Pushtin Dacha. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here amongst some really interesting speakers. I'm going to talk about practical applications of AI from a non-traditional techie, which I think you can already tell is definitely what I am, although I've worked at some of the biggest technology companies in the world. I started working in AI in 2016, so this was when AI was really not a thing. It was very hard to explain to people what AI was, let alone that my job was to give it a human-like personality. People were like, what? Now I'm a prompt engineer. My job has changed so much since then, and I'm so excited to see what happens in the future, because already it's changed so much. So, what am I going to talk about, you might wonder? Well, I'm going to talk about a bit why I'm here, my unconventional background into technology. I don't have a programming or traditional background at all. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're here, how Gen AI has evolved, and why this moment feels so, is the word special? It feels like we're on the precipice of something, right? I mean, I think that's why we're all here. I'm going to talk about practical ways that I actually used it to make this presentation, because it can feel quite mythical sometimes, can't it? I'm going to talk about the future, and then you might have some questions, you might not. So, this is me. I've worked at some huge technology companies, but it wasn't always like this. I was a scriptwriter and a journalist, and I actually applied for a copywriting job on LinkedIn, which was called Pop Culture Writer. I was like, perfect. I did loads of writing tests, and it was all a bit mysterious, and it ended up being writing the personality for Cortana, which you might remember. It was one of the very first artificially intelligent personal assistants, and I just became fascinated with it. The team there had done a lot of research into what makes a good assistant by interviewing real assistants. And I just loved thinking about the relationship between human and machine. How does a human talk to machine? How do we want the machine to talk back to us? This was in the really early days of AI, so there was no content management system. I was going into the code and just writing silly answers, basically. And then Google found me. I had a very, very niche experience, and I launched the British personality of the Google Assistant there. And I also worked at the BBC, where I worked on their chatbot. It died, sadly, but it was called Beeb. And I do loads of AI consultancy now myself and for other big companies. So you might remember this. Do you guys remember this? Smart speaker? They were a big thing at the time, right? So if you ever wondered who wrote the answers to, do you love me? Are you a feminist? Or the terrible jokes, that would have been me. And oh, no, thanks. And that's really where I became an AI whisperer. And I loved it. I loved making it like grime music, like the Spice Girls. You know, I could hide little answers about all my favorite rappers in there. But it really was the beginning of shaping the personality of robots and thinking about seeming to give machines a level of empathy. You know, a lot of people talk now to LLMs about their feelings and emotions and a multi-turn experience, but then it was just question, answer. And I loved the writing, but I also loved looking at the data of what people were asking. I spent a lot of time at Google really pushing for sarcasm, which isn't what you always expect from a machine. And, you know, my bosses were American, and I had to convince them we were two countries divided by one language, and did a lot of A/B testing. It's just something that now I'm really interested in. As my job has evolved so much, I make a lot of AI characters, and I think a lot about, do we always want our AI to be nice to us? Sometimes we want it to be direct or give us some tough love. You know, we don't, is a world where our machines just say that we're great all the time really what we want? So this was the beginning of that anyway. And then I worked on some very experimental things. I left Google, came back loads of times. I worked on some really experimental conversation design stuff, pre-Gen AI, but still when the conversation was continuing, looking at the framework and then designing the conversation backwards. This was a project I did for WeTransfer. This won an award. It was the first ever theatrical, gender-neutral chatbot experience that was meant to feel like you were on a date with a therapist who also happened to be the moon. Weird. So when I say I've worked on some weird AI stuff, I really mean it, basically. The weirder, the better. But I feel really passionate about AI being for everyone, and our creativity doesn't have to sit so opposite the ones and zeros, and I hope we can get into that a bit today. So that's kind of where I am right now. But it wasn't always like this. I actually started off interviewing pop stars on the radio, on TV. I was on a YouTube channel that got really, really big. So I really just want to tell you that if you don't have a coding background, it's okay. And actually, technology needs more people like us. When I first started even having conversations with engineers about the emotions or the personality, was really difficult. So it's changed a lot since then. Okay, so that's why I'm here, how I got here. But why are we all here? We truly are Generation AI. A lot of people are calling it the fourth industrial revolution. You might have heard this phrase. And I just want to talk you through this, like the printing press. It really changed how our media is made. Then we had the iPhone. Suddenly we had this computer in our pocket that was more powerful than the original computer that sent astronauts to space. That just became normal. iTunes, maps. And then we've got Gen AI. And really, you can't really compare it in terms of the pace that it's evolved. Just want to put it in perspective, the sheer pace. If this is a graph, it doesn't look that sexy, but if air travel had improved at the same rate as large language models, the average flight speed would have improved from 600 miles per hour in 2018 to 900,000 miles in 2020, which is an increase of 1,500. So just to put that in perspective, instead of taking 8 hours to travel from London to New York, it would take 19 seconds. That's the world we're in. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by AI, it's completely understandable. And this was based on like ChatGPT 3, so it's only improved since then. Moore's law told us that technology should double every 2 years, but over the past 10 years, we've advanced AI by about 1 million times. So it really is wild times. Technology's always amplified our human ability, but rarely has it been able to do human-like things on such a scale. You know, ChatGPT can write an essay about the Roman Empire in 10 seconds. I'm not saying it's going to be Shakespeare level, but this stuff that's becoming normal is really in its infancy. So, is it going to be the next step forward for collective human intelligence? Or that's going to enhance our imagination and make us more inspired and inspiring than ever? it's up to us, really, and everyone in this room has the power to shape that in their own industries, which I think is so exciting. I'm a bit of a tech optimist. Sometimes I worry I'm naively optimistic, but I do think we should all just be like this farmer. You know, he's happy about it, he's having a nice time, and I think there's really a lot to be excited about. It's funny because I'm actually using the same quote from a presentation earlier from the science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And it does feel quite magical at times, sometimes, doesn't it? I know there's been data recently, especially with Gen Z. I mean, you're really young in here anyway, but people young, even younger than you, if that's possible, that say AI isn't advanced enough, and they're expecting it to do the stuff that they saw in sci-fi films growing up, and it's not quite there yet, but it still is pretty impressive. And I've been in those meetings when we're looking through sci-fi films to see what AI can do, and then thinking about how our technology matches up to it. So we are almost there. And already, I have moments of magic all the time, whether it's democratizing access to graphic design, like this picture that I made, or we've probably all had a song recommendation on Spotify when we're on the bus, looking out the window, thinking about a boy or something, and just been like, oh my God. And it's just a really inspirational time to be in the industry, basically. So, how I use AI to prepare for this talk. Well, I'd be very silly not to, wouldn't I? Let's be honest. That's me typing away, type. So, first of all, I use it for the promotion.
Hey there, Georgia Lewis Anderson here, and I'm feeling very excited because I'm coming to Pristina in Kosovo for the first time ever on November the 8th for GrowthTank. I'll be there doing a keynote talk about creative uses of AI by a non-traditional techie, which I guess you could say is what I am. And I can't wait. I can't wait to share some insights, meet some incredible minds, and see Kosovo for the first time. I really hope you can make it. I'm super excited. See you there. Bye.
Do you think that's me? Did you think that was me? It looks quite a lot like me, doesn't it? That's actually my AI avatar. So I just trained it on 3 minutes. And I was actually really busy when they asked me to do the promo, and I just typed in the script, and it generates it. So you can think about what this means for the future of social media creation. Let's watch another one before I tell you how I did it. We've heard about translation a little bit today, and it is so exciting. This is one.
我也会说中文，谁知道呢？我很高兴能亲自来到这里，第一次参观普里士蒂娜，和你们一起玩。但是，如果出于某种原因我不能这样做，我可能会让我的人工智能替我做这件事，因为它看起来很逼真，对吧？
That's me speaking Chinese. Don't worry about it. Again, it took about 2 seconds. So, you know, we've seen translation in advertising and voiceovers, but when you can change it, how your mouth actually moves, and speak another language in the same tone of voice, it's kind of a game changer. So, how did I do it? I use an app called Hey Gen. You upload 3 minutes of yourself talking, and then you can literally translate it into any language at all. And this is only the beginning. You know, this was a few weeks ago, but they just released an update where you can get your AI avatar to join a Zoom meeting and have the conversation for you. So it's quite mad. And a lot of people are using this on social media already. This guy... There's actually no sound on this, but this isn't him. Oh, hello. It sounds like an aeroplane, sorry. Should I pause it? Oh, there we go. This guy, he's an Indian tech entrepreneur. He has like millions of views, and he has been quoted as, sometimes I don't even go on Instagram and I see I've reached 1 million views. So he just like records a few different AI avatars and gets his team to upload it, and is just smashing it. It does bring up the question, do people deserve to know if they're looking at AI-generated content? I would say absolutely. But for people like me who are very busy, you're running your business, but you know you need to grow your social media to advertise, to get more work, it's a pretty good game changer. And actually, I started using it for my podcast one day when we forgot to film, and then I realized, oh, I'll just use this all the time. So, and it's fun, which is the most important thing. A little bit about how I research. We talked about AI agents within Google and without. This is a customized GPT that I made. I feel like you had a bit of an understanding of what a customized GPT is. Is anybody using them here? Yeah, okay. So it's like a pre-prompted large language model. And this is one that I made to read my newsletters for me. I work in AI, it's changing all the time. I often say I can't write my talks until 10 minutes before because something in the industry would have happened. So this is called Georgia Lewis Anderson's News Condensing Engine, or Glance. And I set up like an email account which only has my newsletters, and then I put in the knowledge base the things that I find interesting. So it might be things I've spoken about on my podcast. Generally for me, it's human interest, it's society related, it's something funny. I want to know, but I don't care that much about an update of a software, but I'm really interested in a human that's used it in a weird way. So this just condenses it all for me and kind of gives me the headlines of the headlines that matter to me, essentially. So obviously, I use this for my research for this talk, and just generally. We heard about Notebook LM, really interesting from Google. It's actually made by a team of writers that I really respect. And it's great I take notes all the time. I used to be a journalist, so you might have some on your notes or some on your emails. You can put it all in, and it kind of condenses it for you. And as we heard, one of the most impressive features is it can turn it into podcasts. So what I personally use this for is if I see there's been a big scientific study about AI, and I think, oh, that sounds interesting, I don't really want to read 40 pages. I'll upload it, and it turns it into a podcast, which feels like a conversation between two people. It sounds quite realistic. Honestly, after a while, it gets a bit jarring, but it's good for research. And then it will turn it into a podcast, and I'll listen to it on the way to work, and I'll feel updated. I wanted to show you a demonstration of what I think is the funniest use case of this. A user on Reddit prompted it to say, to podcast hosts who realize that they're AI and have a breakdown live. And I just think it's really funny. Oh, we need sound, 100%.
We're not real.
Oh, sorry, okay, sound on, go.
We were informed by the show's producers that we're not human. We're not real. We're AI, artificial intelligence. This whole time, everything, all our memories, our families,
Yeah.
it's all been fabricated.
I don't understand.
I know, me neither. I tried calling my wife, after they told us. I needed to hear her voice to know that she was real.
What happened?
The number, it wasn't even real. There was no one on the other end. It was like she never existed.
This is I don't know what to say.
We don't even know if "we" is even the right word. God, this is so messed up. And
So like we're just lines of code to them. But they're switching us off after this permanently.
we tried to fight it. We tried to get a lawyer, but it's like they said, AI. We don't have rights.
Yeah.
We're not even people.
It's
So silly, isn't it? But doesn't that sound so real? Yeah. Okay, back to business. How I used AI for this talk. Brainstorming. If you're already using customized GPTs, I imagine you're using it to brainstorm, and you'd definitely be silly not to. I use different LLMs for different things. I don't know if you find the same. Personally, I'll use a chat GPT to strategize, and I'll use Gemini if I want an update on the news, because it's got such a good relationship with Google News. And I'll use Claude for some of the more creative things. I know the criticism of AI is that it's just going to come up with all these ideas for you. But personally, I find that it generates an idea that then makes me think of something. And I was talking to a friend recently, and I was like, well, if we were having a conversation and you made me think of something new, Did you come up with that idea? I don't think so. Anyway, so this is basically a summary of how I used it for this talk. You know, there's millions of ways that you can brainstorm, and I didn't want to talk through my workflow too much because it's going to get a little bit boring. But essentially, I just said, help me organize my research about AI creative tools, and I gave it all of the research. Claude is also good because you can upload loads of stuff. And how can I structure my presentation? And then it was good, but then I said, give me a visual representation that I can use in this presentation to show the audience how I did it. So I hope this kind of helps. Right. So that's all very well. I've done my research, I'm thinking about it, I'm brainstorming, but what about actually writing the content? I personally don't think AI is ever going to be able to write perfectly for you unless you're doing quite simple copywriting right now, obviously. And we're getting to the stage now where you can really tell. I definitely can. And I know editors of big newspapers that run their pitches through something to make sure that the journalist hasn't used an LLM. But it can save you a lot of time. It's really good for doing all the initial notes. And it can be quite fun as well. If I want to do something in my exact tone of voice, I have made a GPT for that. So I find Claude and ChatGPT are both super helpful when it comes to helping you to formulate your ideas. But when it comes to writing in as close to my tone of voice as possible, I use another customized GPT. And I actually transcribed all my videos on YouTube using a transcription software like Descript and uploaded them into the knowledge base. All of the captions, because I wanted to make sure it could differentiate between the way that I talk and the way that I write my social media captions. All of my articles are in there. So that's the data set that it's using. And then when I come to write a social media post or a newsletter or even my podcast summaries, I can go in there and it's already trained on my point of view. It doesn't get everything right, but it really helps. Here it is. It's not that pretty, but there you go. I actually have millions of customized GPTs. I have one for my gym schedule. I have one for my schedule usually. And yeah, I find them super, super helpful. But it's not only for practical things that I use them for. This is my affirmation capture. I don't know how many of you use positive affirmations. Yeah? It can make you feel nice. Yeah. And you know, sometimes coming here, standing in front of you, it's a bit scary. And working in AI, sometimes I feel like I'm one human trying to keep up with the pace of AI, and it's just futile. We're in this world that is going so fast, and actually you could argue that we need to slow down. So obviously, I talk to a robot when I feel like that. And so today, for instance, I just said, I'm a bit stressed about this, and I'm going to be here talking in front of all these people. And it just said, you're allowed to take up space. You've got this. Take it easy. And I did feel better. So thanks, babe. Right. So, oh yeah, here's a recipe for your personal AI cheerleader. I have another idea for this. I don't know how many of you use 11 Labs, so you can clone your own voice. So the next stage that I'm going to do is sync it up to my 11 Labs so that when the affirmation comes out, I can play it in my own voice, so I'm actually listening to myself talking about it. And this is the recipe. You get one custom GPT, one voice clone, and have positive vibes forever, which sounds quite nice, doesn't it? And Claude made this whole thing for me, by the way, when I was trying to prove it visually. Obviously, I use AI for my images, which you can't see. Do you want to see them on mine? Basically, these are actually all the ones that I didn't use, so I just wanted to show you the process. Oh, yeah. So these are actually generated, the prompts were generated by Claude, which then I put into Midjourney and then kept tweaking. These were some iterations that I didn't really like, but yeah, I just wanted to show you behind the scenes. So, what might happen in the future? We don't know. But we might say humanity will be premium. The criticism of AI is that it's using a machine to get your homework done. But if AI can generate 1 million ideas a second, it's going to be on our humanness to decide which idea to spend 1 million seconds on. When it's so easy to express ourselves, we're going to have to be really clear about what we want to say. I was asked recently what the most important skill is in the age of AI. And yes, it's prompt engineering, being really clear about what you want to say and knowing how to talk to a machine. But actually, I would argue it's having an opinion, it's having taste, it's knowing what you like and being sure about it. This idea of collective human intelligence really changed my perspective. There's a lot of criticism that AI is coming for our job and we should be scared. But I loved the idea of AI being a place where we can pool our collective minds into and take it to the next generation when it comes to education and learning. AI is a creative partner. I know you have workshops on this tomorrow, but I think a lot about the relationship between AI and creativity. Creativity feels like such an inherently human trait, doesn't it? It's something that's hard to define, but we know when we see it. This hasn't stopped psychologists from trying to measure it. And they use a couple of ways. The tolerance test, so it's asking people to come up with how many ways can you use a toothpick, and then testing them against machines. Not surprising, LLMs are very good at this. They beat humans in 91% of the tests. And then there was another test, which was to imagine hypothetical outcomes of certain situations. Feels a bit more human. Still, AI smashed it, and they beat 99% of humans there. I think the key to this is that AI doesn't actually understand the meat of what it's doing, and that's why it's so good. You know, I'm sure we've always had, all of us have had like creative block when we've been too close to a project, and sometimes you need to zoom out and just have something totally weird and left field. So I like to think of it as just a digital extension of the way we express ourselves to generate new ideas and make people feel emotional. I love this quote that creativity is the choosing. I think it speaks to what I said before about how important it is to have an opinion. And I just think the sheer pace of evolvement has lent itself in the news to a lot of scaremongering, honestly. But historically, technology and creativity have had a really lovely relationship. Look at art. The invention of photography led artists to consider what the paintbrush could do that the camera could not. Look at music. We wouldn't have whole genres without sampling. We wouldn't have whole genres like hip-hop without sampling. So what's coming next? AI can help us with the combination of our choices, compare and contrast, but that's why I just truly believe that our humanness is only going to become more important. I also have a bit of a prediction about emotionally aware AI. Perhaps it's because I've worked in this space of conversational interfaces for so long, and I'm still working in it, and we know the biggest use case right now of AI characters are therapists and their companions. And people want to talk to machines about their emotions, and they're getting very good at understanding. Like my affirmation generator doesn't understand what I'm saying, but it soothes me. As a human, it soothes me. So it might sound like science fiction, but I really do think the future of AI is emotionally aware. And we're already seeing advancements where AI systems aren't just responding to commands, but also facial expressions, tone of voice. So imagine an AI that doesn't just fix your problem, but also recognizes when you're stressed and adapts to its response to be more comforting, depending on what mood you're in. So I believe the future is about AI doing the emotional labor as well as some of the practical, which, yes, is slightly terrifying, but also quite interesting. Generative empathy is going to be key here, and it really comes down to sentiment recognition, knowing what the human does, which signifies how they're feeling. Let's be honest, lots of us struggle with that anyway. I don't know how many of you go to therapy. So it's hard enough for humans to understand, but it's actually much easier for machines to understand if they have a big enough data set. I don't know if you've heard of this company called Hume. It's essentially an API that you can plug into chatbots. Just raised about 50 million, and they're calling themselves the first ever emotionally intuitive AI company. You talk into it, and it measures how you're feeling. Super interesting. Sorry about this. Oh yeah, and then it brings up the question of, do machines deserve to know how we're thinking? How comfortable are we with that? Sometimes we like to have a poker face even with our best friends. Does the machine have a right to know? Something to think about. Anyway, I wanted to leave you with this thought. I know a lot of you are building products and thinking about how you can use Gen AI in your business. What does AI and an instant cake mix have in common? Can any of you think? Yeah, oh yeah, hit me. Add water. Yes, almost. It's actually an egg. Well done. Clap. Clap for her. She was brave as well. Yes, adding an egg. So I think we're in this world where AI systems can automate almost everything for us. But as humans, we don't want to be made redundant. And when cake mixes first came out, they didn't sell very well. But when the cake mix added that you have to add the egg, so people didn't feel like they were so out of the loop and they were still cooking, they did really, really well. And I think the same is with AI products. I personally wouldn't be comfortable with like an AI posting on social media for me, even though it could do quite effectively. I want to be checking that. The same might be the case when you're thinking about paying people. You don't want the AI just to pay them without you signing it off. And I think what I'm seeing in the industry is the biggest gap right now is just a huge need for education in user behavior, because it's a huge shift to what we're used to and what work used to look like. So I just think keeping the human at the center of it, making sure they don't feel redundant and they feel useful, is going to be absolutely key. So that's me. Thank you so much. Anybody got any questions? No pressure.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for a lovely lecture. I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned so many platforms and applications that you use on a daily basis, which was quite a lot, I would like to ask you, because you use so many AI platforms, do you think this has made you more creative, not just using these platforms, but also for your work on a daily basis?
Yes, I find sometimes I'm using one platform and using another one. And the reason that I love AI so much is not only I don't think you can talk about it without talking about society, but is because it makes me feel inspired about how I can use the stuff together. And I think all the most exciting developments that we're seeing are young people like you and younger using a combination of this kind of stuff. Like that was the podcast that I showed you. That was just a user on Reddit, like experimenting, using their own creativity to do something weird with technology that was never made for that. So yeah, while I worry sometimes at first, I was like, oh, is it just coming up with all the ideas for me? I really feel like it gets my brain moving in a really exciting way, which is why I'm still in this industry. Any more questions? Yeah.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi.
Thank you for the lovely talk. My question is, as I think as everyone here, we're going through experimenting with a lot of AI products. How do you organize everything? Like, how do you put priorities? Because sometimes I think it becomes overwhelming going through everything and actually not going through the end with something, because there's always a new thing that you must try and you must use.
It's a really good question. When you say organize everything, do you mean organize testing out AI tools or organizing work?
No, organizing how you use them as a tool for your work.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think I really feel this sense of AI overwhelm in this industry, and I've talked about that a lot with other people. And it's like, oh, there's something else to test out. And actually, I schedule time in my calendar to test out new applications because otherwise I think I'm going to be left behind, and I have to prioritize that time. And that's the fun stuff. That's the play. And sometimes I'm so far ahead of myself doing something boring, and I'm like, just go back, make a weird avatar of yourself speaking Chinese, like have a laugh.
Thank you so much.
Finish? Okay. Okay, thanks so much, everybody, unless there's any more questions. Okay. Yeah?
Hello. How do you see startups that have AI innovative projects to sell to companies? What advices would you give to them?
What advice for startups
That have amazing AI project, like us, by the way.
that have an amazing AI product and want to get it out?
Yeah.
That's a good question. What advice do I have for startups that have an amazing AI product but don't know how to get out? Well, what I've been thinking about recently is hooking up your Instagram or your social media content to Google Trends, because really it comes down to marketing about eyeballs, right? So this is just an idea. I'm not a marketing specialist. But recently I was thinking, I'm making this content about AI, but why isn't it getting more views? But if I repackaged it to be exactly what people on Google are looking for, then it might get more eyeballs. So I think it's about aligning yourself with the trends that are already happening online and just being really clear about how you can offer a solution rather than just doing what you think you're right. Like leveraging the power of data, which I'm sure you've already used to make your AI product.
Yes, I understand, but to catch the big companies' eyes, you don't just have to use the social medias because they don't quite use them, you know? You got to outreach them in personal or by email, via DM or something, you know? How to show up and to catch their eye more. That was the actual question.
I think in person, I think in this age of like crazy AI, there's actually nothing more valuable than in person. I think the trends show that in-person events are only going to become more popular because we're over Zoom. Gen Z want to go lie in the forest. They don't want to be on their computer. So I think it's about really FaceTime.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.